Painting one tulip petal and learning about shine area and dealing with multiple colors on one subject. An outline drawing is done, which is available for download. This tulip petal is slightly enlarged to get those details really worked through. And now with an elastic eraser, I'm removing the excess amount of graphite off the paper. It's important to leave as less graphite marks visible as possible. Now let's mix watercolors. Adding water to color palette. Be sure that your water is clean, starting with Sennelier Red. Adding Perlin Violet and Lemon Yellow. For the next one, I'm using Alizarin Crimson, it's cooler red. For the third one, Lemon Yellow and Sennelier Red. Lamb Black mixed with Lemon Yellow. And adding Manganese Violet. Testing on a piece of paper. Look at your reference and see if your colors match. You can use any other pigment that you have, experiment, try, and find the right color that you already have. Now let's start painting. First, applying water to 1/2 of this tulip petal. Be sure that your water after color mixing is clean and your brush is also clean. Because of the shiny areas, we need to start really fresh and clean. Applying water just enough for watercolors to be moved. Taking color mix of Lemon Yellow with Sennelier Red and going over the left side of this tulip petal, and at the bottom part adding Lemon Yellow, using round simple synthetic brush for these first layers because I just need a smooth area applied, nothing detailed. We don't think about details right now, we just need a very nice base color to start painting. Be careful with the edges, don't go over them. And the left side of this tulip petal, there's a lot of yellows. It is slightly curved and a light is shining through that red color and creating more yellowish color. Adding Sennelier Red to this left side, carefully moving pigments into each other, not over mixing. With the clean and dry brush, you can lift the pigment from the paper if you somewhere painted where you don't have to paint. At the upper part of this tulip petal, I'm adding Alizarin Crimson because there is a cooler area of red, and Alizarin Crimson is much cooler pigment than Sennelier Red, for example. Be careful with the edges. You can slow down here video and work at your own pace. And that part where is the shiny area, I'm with a clean and dry brush lifting out the pigment. While my area surface is still wet, I can lift watercolors very easily. Going to the right side of this tulip petal, applying water and starting with Alizarin Crimson. This side is much cooler compared to the left side. Also careful with the edges. And as you can see, I'm applying whole area in one go, and even going over those shiny areas which are visible in the reference, but that we can deal later. Everything is painted in really light and transparent watercolor layer. I'm not painting very saturated. Everything is very light and moving quite quickly while my surface is wet, so I can push my watercolors where I need, and when I need I can lift out. For example, now I'm lifting the area where is this shiny spots on the right side, also in the middle part. I have my surface is slightly wet. Nothing is too much. There's no puddles. Everything is slightly wet, and I can still work and manipulate with watercolors as I like. If everything will start to flow too much, then watercolors will take control of my painting and I will not be in control. And as you can see, left side is also a little bit wet, so I can freely lift out the pigment that I have there. And already after this first layer, as I'm lifting out some watercolor areas, we can see already tonal changes in values. Somewhere is darker, somewhere is lighter, somewhere is warmer, and somewhere is cooler. Already we are establishing tonal values and color tones. Moving to the next layer. My surface is completely dry at this point. I am taking Sennelier red with lemon yellow mix and starting from the darker area, what I see in the reference. I always feel much greater confidence when I start painting from the darker area. I know how to deal there, and my layers are transparent and I can control the strength of pigment that I'm applying. Also, left side is quite dark. There I'm using more of lemon yellow and Sennelier red. It's really a warm and yellowish color tone. In this tulip petal, in the shadow areas, there's a lot of warm tone, which is yellow in this case. Adding alizarin crimson to the bottom part of the right side, still using round synthetic brush. I'm not yet applying any details, smoothing the applied edge lines of the watercolors and moving slowly forward. Taking alizarin crimson, and as you can see, the right side of the very edge line is very bright red. You can try cadmium red if you don't have Sennelier red. If your reds are a little bit cooler than they appear in the reference, just add Indian yellow or lemon yellow or cadmium yellow. Experiment with pigments that you already have. Just applied watercolor layer and I'm smoothing the edge line of this layer. So everything is smooth and gradually from darker to lighter. No hard edge lines here. Everything up when is applied, after is smoothed out with clean and dry brush. Constantly looking at reference, noticing some darker spots and areas in this middle part. There is a very nice curve and overlap area where it's creating a very intense and dark shadow area. We are just now establishing very lightly those lights and darks. Nothing too specific, nothing too detailed. Everything is still quite loose and still painting very transparently. While the upper part of this tulip petal is drying, I'm taking lamp black and also a little bit of lemon yellow with lamp black, and with the fine tip brush, making very fine brush strokes. Looking at reference constantly. If you see that my hand is slightly pausing, that means that I'm looking constantly at my reference, comparing if everything is correct, if all the spots are placed in the right place. The more we look, the more we see, the more we notice slightest changes in tonal values, in color tones. Now I'm taking clean lemon yellow pigment, it can be cadmium yellow as well, and applying around that black area, also with this fine tip brush. While applying this layer, I'm also a little bit smoothing the layer where is this red color, going with lemon yellow to the red part, because we notice in the reference there's a lot of yellow even in the red color. From the first we see it's tulip petal completely red, but there's a lot of color tones and pinks and violets and yellows and dark violets and some reds. A very transparent layer going over the left side of this tulip petal. Still feel that I need more yellows there. I'm using lemon yellow. Very nice and bright pigment. now starting with more finer brush strokes, adding color to this tulip petal. As you can see, if you look really closely in your reference, you will notice there are a lot of petal veins, very similar to brush strokes, lots of thin brush strokes visible in reference, so that's why we are using a very fine tip brush and applying very fine brush strokes. This tutorial, there is a lot of things going on. It looks like this is a small tulip petal, nothing too fancy. Don't look at it as a beautiful painting, but look at it as an amazing practice. We can practice here brush strokes. We can practice here how to mix and apply multiple pigments on one subject, how to make shiny areas, how to be careful and make crisp edge lines. So here's a lot of things to take into consideration and to practice, and the end result will be amazing and also a great exercise to be better at painting, realistic watercolor painting. Now I'm taking Sennelier Red with Perlin Violet and adding to the right side edge line. As you can see in the reference, it is very dark and very crisp, the very edge line of this tulip. This exact tulip is a little bit starting to fade away, and if you noticed ever, when tulip starts to fade away, the edge line starts to become much darker and roll into the inwards the tulip. So that's what's happening here. This tulip petal is already in a dying stage, and from both sides edge lines are very dark and crisp just because it started to a little bit roll into the inwards this flower. Adding Sennelier Red with a little touch of lemon yellow. And my shiny light areas, now compared to the applied layer, look really light, but as you remember, we applied the whole area and just lifted out the watercolors. But now they look really light and they are much wider than they appear in the reference. That is done intentionally. So by applying layers and layers of watercolors, slowly and gradually those light areas will become smaller. If we would left it the same size as it looks in a reference, then after a few layers, those shiny areas, those light areas would be just painted over. So it's important from the beginning leave a wider space for the light, and then slowly work layer by layer and create it much smaller and more accurate as it appears in the reference. Working with the very fine brush strokes amazing practice for brush strokes to create beautiful texture and mixing different colors on one area. Taking alizarin crimson and painting over the shiny, the light area, because in the reference it's not so light as it looks here on our painting. Also, I'm taking permanent rose, and as we can see, there's a lot of pinks and violets happening in those shiny areas, and very watery layer of permanent rose or any other pink color that you have going over those shiny areas. We still will be visible, the light area, but it will become a little bit more colored because in the reference it's not completely white. So now with watery layer of permanent rose, I'm going over the shiny area. I waited a little bit for my surface to get dry. It's important for watercolor paper to leave a little bit to rest, to dry, and then it will be able to receive another layer of watercolors. If you will be painting non-stoply, it will look all messy and overworked, and the result will not be satisfying just because you weren't following some simple rules of watercolor and how to deal with paper. It's important, even with very high quality watercolor paper, it's important after a few layers to wait for the surface to completely dry, and then paper is ready to receive another layer of watery watercolors. I added a little bit more of Sennelier Red to my color palette, and with the fine brush strokes adding another layer, making shine areas smaller, applying another layer of watercolors, making more saturated layers. Everything is done gradually, not painting with too saturated color mixes. Watercolors are transparent medium, and we need to keep this transparency visible. If we will paint with very saturated watercolors, painting will look dull and not at all realistic. It's all achieved by many layers of transparent watercolors. repeating technique is the same. Constantly looking at reference, adding another layer of watercolors to the darker area, slightly pushing very thin brush strokes towards the light area, and filling and coloring this tulip petal. Taking round synthetic brush, permanent rose, and with watery layer I'm applying this permanent rose to this light area. I'm also a little bit smoothing the layer underneath with the fine brush strokes, like everything incorporating together. Let those watercolors sink into the paper and create more smoother look. And still, if you paint it over too saturated, this pink color, you can again lift out some amount of watercolors from the surface. Now letting the upper part of tulip petal dry, and we can work again another layer of this bottom part of black color using lamp black and mix lemon yellow with lamp black. Looking at reference, in that little area there are also some little curves where the black is a little bit darker, and there are lighter areas as well. So really look into your reference, take that all into consideration, and with very fine and thin brush strokes apply this watercolor layer. Now the upper part is dry and I can go over again with another layer of watercolors. Using fine tip brush, adding fine brush strokes to area, making those lighter area gradually smaller. Adding Perlin Violet to the very edge line of this tulip petal, creating more crisp edge line. As you can see in the reference, there are these crisp edge lines. Not always the edge lines are much darker, but in this case there are. So with the very tip of the brush, careful with the edges, I'm going over with Perlin Violet. Adding a little bit darker color mix of Sennelier Red and Perlin Violet. There on the right side is this also beautiful curve where is visible a little bit darker spot, darker area, and smoothing the applied layer so there are no crisp edge lines in the middle somewhere in this tulip petal. All transitions from darker to lighter are smooth. If you look careful, except for the edge lines, they're inside this tulip petal, nothing crisp, everything is smooth. Now I'm taking a watery layer of Sennelier Red and adding to the left side watery layer of Sennelier red. Using round synthetic brush, applying and smoothing out so everything is smooth and even, and still that yellow pigment, because we're painting transparently, is visible. That's the magic of watercolors. Each layer can be visible through many layers just because we're painting transparently. If we will start painting really saturated, then we will lose this transparency of all layers. Adding a little amount of perlin violet. at the finishing stage of painting this tulip petal, which is parrot tulip petal. And now I'm more in comparing stage and detailing stage, where I look at the both sides of this tulip petal and comparing which side is darker, which is lighter. I still can see that my lights are too light. I will make them tone a little bit down, adding final brush strokes, more visible thin lines to some areas. And this is the stage where you can make it finished and stop and be very happy with the result, or you can push yourself a little bit further and go a little bit more into detailing, more into tonal value study. There's a lot of things can be done here. It's just a matter of your patience, your dedication, how much you want to push yourself, and see how many more layers you can apply. For now, I'm finishing this tutorial, and I think this tulip petal is beautiful and very detailed, very visible, those curves and shine areas. And maybe I will work another 20 minutes after finishing this recording, so I can get a little bit closer and work more on those fine brush strokes. But thank you for being here, thank you for watching and doing this tutorial. Hope you learned something new. Thank you for being here, and see you in my next tutorials. Bye bye!